Nope, your eyes are not deceiving you. This is not a PS Vita disguised as a Nintendo handheld.
I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude.
Exactly. Wait, no, I mean this is the TrimUI Smart Pro, more specifically one that has the custom operating system, Crossmix OS, on the microSD card. So unlike my other reviews on this channel, if all you care about is that Crossmix OS, make sure to check in the timestamps, otherwise I'm going to tell you what's the deal with this TrimUI Smart Pro and why everyone's raving about it. Now the Crossmix OS is a custom OS that's based on the stock Linux-based one that is found on the TrimUI Smart Pro if you buy it from other vendors. But this one improves on basically everything that is needed improvement-wise for the handheld, and in truth, this thing was already pretty damn good. So before I tell you what I like about it, let me tell you this. This unit was provided by Mechdiy for free in exchange for review, and like all of my other reviews, everything said here is of my own opinion. No money was exchanged for this review. Okay, enough of the boring stuff, let's get to the good stuff. Like specs, that's probably boring too, so let me just flash those up on the screen while I tell you what this thing really brings to the table, other than its Vita-like appearance. The standout feature or function, or the claim to fame from me, is first and foremost the beautiful 4.96 1280 by 720p display, which is really hard to find in this price range. On top of that, it does have a lot of the usual stuff like your USB-C charging port, as well as stacked triggers and dual analog sticks. Well, that's a nice one, but it's not perfect, and I'll talk about that later. And then of course you get your D-pad, standard menu and start and select type buttons. Now if you've already heard about the TrimUI Smart Pro from various other channels or outlets, you probably know about its snappy stock OS, and really it is both snappy and customizable. And that customization is only made better by this function key down here, which lets you do things like toggle the LEDs around the sticks, or put the CPU into performance mode, or even battery saving mode. Pretty nifty, just like some of the apps that are also included that let you put the system into a USB mode so you don't actually have to pop out the microSD slot. And then there's also something like Moonlight, which lets you stream from your desktop to the device itself. And these are really nice to haves. Oh, and did I mention Wi-Fi? Well, with Wi-Fi, you can use the RetroArch backend and play some multiplayer games as well, so that's pretty nice. Now I'm going to take a second here to talk about performance, which might not be the TrimUI's strongest suit, considering all the good things about it so far.
It's Ridge Racer! Ridge Racer! Remember that one?
When it comes to PS1 emulation and anything before that, it does a pretty good job. But as soon as you start trying to run something a little bit more demanding, like PSP, Dreamcast, or even, in some cases, N64, well, it doesn't do that so well. Which really is unfortunate because the larger 16:9 aspect ratio works pretty well in my opinion. And yes, you can still run things like 4:3 games and have some black bars or overlays. Now, just like other retro systems that use RetroArch as a backend, or use something like PPSSPP for PSP, you can do some configuration toggling or switching in order to get some better performance, like enabling frame skipping. But, that's not going to be the best experience. Now, before I get into the things that I don't like about the TrimUI, I'm going to take some time to talk about this custom Crossmix operating system. So what is exactly all the hype about this Crossmix OS, given that the stock operating system on the TrimUI Smart Pro is already pretty good? Well, here's what you get. You get a bunch of new apps like screen recording, OTA update, and SMB. Well, there's plenty of tools that are very useful. Let me talk about the OTA update, for example, which means over-the-air update. If you're connected to your Wi-Fi, this means you can update the system without unplugging the microSD card and plugging it into your desktop or something. SMB, that means, theoretically I think, that you can connect it to your Plex or Kodi server and then stream media to it. Then there's also things like FTP, HTTP file servers, meaning you can transfer your files without, again, connecting it directly to your PC. Then of course there's even more customizations, like with more custom themes and the ability to change the stick LED colors to this rainbow unicorn vomit that I have here. And I'm not even mentioning a CPU max mode, which should improve performance. Then there's a scraper tool, which is actually low-key a game changer. That thing will help you find the art for games that you may have transferred directly to the card yourself. And get this, there's even an app resume upon shutdown, meaning when you restart the system, that same game will reopen again. There's probably way more things that I'm missing for the Crossmix OS, but I'll mention the biggest one in my opinion, which is the addition of PortMaster. If you haven't heard of PortMaster, basically, it lets you play ports of PC titles that way smarter people than me have managed to get working on these retro devices. And because the TrimUI has Wi-Fi, you can just download them right there from the application since you're connected over the network. Real nice. Now there is the other thing that people have mentioned with CrossMix that I've also heard, and that is the improved performance. Now I'll say that personally, I have found it to be kind of better, but maybe not significantly better for the titles that I tested on PSP and Dreamcast. But I'll fully admit that maybe that's a skill issue or that I haven't tried the right titles. I'll also mention that I didn't make this comparison using the CPU Max option in the tools that I mentioned briefly. But I, for one, will never complain about having more options, particularly more options to choose things like a Vulkan backend, which should give you better performance, or a higher version of the PSP emulator. Anyway, Crossmix OS I think is an improvement overall to the stock OS, which was already pretty good. And there are guides out there on how to install this yourself, as it is open source. But if you're a lazy man like me, you could always just check out the Surwish service on Mechdiy, which you can either purchase a microSD card with the OS pre-configured on it for you, or just buy the whole bundle with the TrimUI Smart Pro and CrossMix ready to go on a microSD card. The best part? You know how lots of tubers will recommend that you buy your own new microSD card because the ones you get are usually dumpster fires? Well, Mechdiy promises branded ones on their website, and the one that they provided for this unit was actually a SanDisk Ultra. Definitely no complaints there. So make sure to check out the links in the description because there might be some discount codes there as well. So let me take a moment now to talk about some of the things I don't like about the TrimUI Smart Pro. Originally, it was the not so great performance, being that some higher end systems would be hit or miss, and that really didn't work so well with the nice display. But there's no denying the value of this handheld coming in at under $100 and generally significantly less than that with discounts. But remember how I mentioned the dual sticks earlier? Yeah, they're not so great because they're a little too Vita-like in that they don't have an L3 or R3 function. Is it a nitpick? Yes, of course. You know that I nitpick here. To be fair, there aren't really a lot of retro game titles as far as I'm aware that would make use of those L3 or R3 buttons, but if you are going to game stream using something like Moonlight, yeah, that's a bit of a hiccup there. The larger hiccups are probably, though, the not so great triggers and the lack of video output. The triggers just appear to be linear unless I'm mistaken, and the video out, well, there are two USB-C ports, but the top port is just for debugging, and the bottom port is for charging. And that's a real shame, because no big screen couch co-op gaming is disappointing. Yeah, another nitpick, I know. So let's get down to who should buy this thing. I think anyone looking to hop into some retro gaming on a budget that isn't all that interested in spending the big bucks on, say, an Odin 2, an Odin 2 Mini, or even one of the numerous Anbernics, but you also still want a decent sized screen, this is probably for you. For me personally, this is one of the best value handhelds out there in terms of the display size, resolution, as well as the playable library, and of course, CrossMix OS. Yes, there's steep competition out there in this price range, with things like the Powkiddy X28 or even the RG35XXH, RG Cube, and man, there are a lot of Anbernic handhelds, aren't there? But again, at the cost of entry, there's a lot to like here, just like this channel, so make sure you slap the buttons on screen and check out the other retro reviews next.